Hello, welcome to AI Wisdom. My name is Crispin. Among the many topics raised when discussing the downside risks of a superintelligence AI is the analogy with nuclear weapons. To what extent does the analogy hold, and what lessons, if any, can we draw from the nuclear experience that might guide us on how to best prepare for the potential downside risks associated with AI technology? Well, I've spent most of my adult life studying nuclear weapons, its history, their development, their current doctrine and deployment around the world, and I feel that there are some significant comparisons to be made, but also major differences. In terms of these similarities, there are three main ones. The first is prior to the development of nuclear weapons, humanity did not have the ability to destroy itself. No matter what we did, there was no realistic way for all human life to end. But once nuclear weapons were developed and deployed in large numbers, particularly with thermonuclear weapons coupled with reliable delivery systems, it was unquestionable. A general nuclear exchange between the United States and the Soviet Union would likely end most life on this planet. Now, we don't know for sure that AGI will be developed that way, but it seems highly probable that if we designed an AI superintelligence with the goal of destroying human life, it would be highly efficient in doing that. So the question of whether life can be ended through AI, I think can generally be answered in the affirmative, although the actual assessment of the risk and the spectrum of possible outcomes I address in another video. But bottom line, a superintelligent AI that was designed with the purpose of destroying human life would be highly effective in doing so and considerably deleterious to our ongoing well-being as a species, much like nuclear weapons also could be. The second similarity is there is a great unknown when it comes to the forward projection of AI. So prior to the actual detonation in the Manhattan Project of July of 1945, it was uncertain what effect nuclear weapons could really have. And once we entered the nuclear age, when the Soviets first developed their nuclear weapon and detonated it 4 years later in 1949, and we had this rush, this arms race between two major superpowers and gradual proliferation to others, it was really unclear where this was all going to take us and whether or not the world really would end in this massive conflagration of nuclear holocaust. In short, all of those things that we understand today in terms of arms control, proliferation agreements, the nuclear taboo, comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty, treaty against the proliferation of nuclear weapons, all of these things had yet even to be imagined. Indeed, in the 1940s, after the Second World War ended, Harry Truman actually believed that nuclear weapons would come under international control. That never happened for a variety of reasons, and we could not have foreseen the way things actually developed. That high level of uncertainty that existed back then is similar to the level of uncertainty that exists today with AI, that we are entering this new epoch change, this new epoch era, and we don't really know where that's going to lead us. The third big similarity is that in the early days of nuclear weapons development, everything that surrounded it in terms of the fissile material, the science, the legal aspects, command and control systems, delivery systems, doctrine, all of that was managed by the absolute best and brightest that all countries could find. If you were at the bleeding edge of thinking in the United States or in the Soviet Union, highly probable that you're working in the nuclear field. That really dropped off at the end of the Cold War when the best and brightest went into new things, climate change, development, all kinds of other issues. And nuclear weapons, despite still being there and in fact proliferating, this fell to second tier, and we didn't have the same caliber of thinkers working on it, and certainly not the same collective consciousness. During the Cold War, people had their civil defense classes and they talked about nuclear weapons around the dinner table. But when the Cold War ended, nuclear weapons went off everyday dialogue, whereas AI is in that place now. So on the plus side of the ledger, we have the smartest, best and brightest minds working in AI today. They are the cream of the crop of human thinking and capacity to work through the plethora of issues that exist. Now, is the balance right between capability and wisdom, doctrine? Many would say no, that our capabilities are far outstripping our ability to manage this technology, but nevertheless, it is appealing to the best people. That said, there are many more differences between AI superintelligence and nuclear weapons. First, the nuclear weapons have a clear and singular purpose: to destroy. And while their effect on the international system and order is really complex, far more complex than people imagine, mad mutually assured destruction, that sort of thing, they play out in many different ways. Nevertheless, it is clear what they are designed to do. By contrast, an AI superintelligence has unlimited purposes to be used for. It has many things that are highly productive and can add to human felicity and well-being in the most extraordinary ways, and has many other potentially destructive side effects that go beyond simply blowing up and destroying cities. Nuclear weapons are quite easy to understand, at least conceptually, even if the human mind can't really apprehend the true destructive potential of a nuclear bomb. They at least know what a nuclear bomb does, and it doesn't do anything else. A second difference is that nuclear weapons, from its origin right through to the present day, have always been developed and controlled by governments. Government systems are in place to manage, maintain, and control the deployment and use of nuclear weapons in every country that has them. So there is no non-state actor that's developing its own nuclear weapon. It's very hard for people to build them in their backyard. And to this day, we have not got any evidence that that's occurred. It's always been under the control of governments. Conversely, with AI superintelligence, the latest innovations have been in private companies and continue to be pushed by the private sector. Of course, governments are heavily involved in AI development, but they are alongside many other tracks of development. This feeds into another issue, which is the United States unilaterally had control of nuclear weapons for 4 full years until a second country developed them. Whereas on a much shorter timescale, artificial superintelligence will proliferate at multiple tracks in different times, competitively, independently, overlapping, many different disparate interests involved. Another difference is that nuclear weapons are simply a complex bit of machinery. They are inanimate objects. They have absolutely no will of their own, and everything that they do is at the behest of human operators, even if by mistake. Nuclear weapons are not there with any sense of purpose beyond that, whereas an artificial superintelligence will, by definition, be an intelligence. Now, whether it's a self-directed AGI is somewhat besides the point. The fact is that it will have its own ability to make decisions, perhaps even launch a nuclear attack, for example. And that's a new dimension that we haven't come across. I've talked to a colleague recently that says, any new technology has positive and negative effects. We shouldn't get hysterical. And I absolutely agree that fear shouldn't drive everything. There should be some degree of thought put into things. But the difference is that it's not a matter of us deciding whether or not we're going to use a technology for good or ill. If the technology itself decides whether it's going to do something for good or ill. And that's a whole dimension of technology that we have never experienced before, including with nuclear weapons. Related to this is that nuclear weapons do not deceive or manipulate human operators in order to be used. An AI superintelligence may have an objective and not really care too much about how it achieves that objective, certainly not attribute the right externality value to what action it actually takes, which is understandable because humans are very bad at doing that as well, and therefore may deceive, manipulate, obfuscate its true intentions in order to outsmart a species, a human species, that is far inferior to itself when it comes to its overall thinking. Reproduction is a big issue. I've already mentioned that states control the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Well, AI systems could build their own AI superintelligence systems. Nuclear weapons do not self-replicate. Nuclear weapons can't build other nuclear weapons. And there is no down-the-line supply chain issue that is not directly under the responsibility of the nation state that operates it. All arms control agreements in the international system that govern nuclear weapons presuppose that it is a nation state that's ultimately responsible, whereas a general artificial intelligence or an artificial superintelligence may have the ability to improve itself or make other intelligences that it alone can communicate with that we can't possibly understand or even know that this has happened. As a kind of mirror to one of the similarities points I made is that although the actual consequences and implications of a nuclear weapon wasn't known before the nuclear weapon was first tested, once they were constructed and built, every nuclear weapon that is built and designed is roughly understood in terms of what it will do, its yield. There can be some surprises and some mistakes, but we know what a nuclear weapon will ultimately do. Whereas an artificial intelligence, an artificial superintelligence, will surprise us. GPT-4 surprised us. It surprised their own creators. These things have potential and capabilities that we do not yet foresee. In fact, one of the exciting things about developing AI is the fact that these things do surprise us. And thus, the actual creation of an AI may surprise us not only immediately, but also down the line with things that we could not have foreseen and certainly did not expect. One difference that's perhaps positive is that nuclear weapons, for whatever else they might be for, are absolutely not for improving human well-being. Many AI systems might be doing that. And while nuclear weapons have application in deterring the use of other nuclear weapons, AI systems do not necessarily deter other AIs. That's not the point of an AI system. Many AIs will be used to improve productivity and well-being. And in fact, so much so that most people are going to be deeply reluctant to ever give them up. GPT-4 has been rolled out, and already everyone who has used it just about actually loves it. They wouldn't suggest shelving that and putting it away. Even the most ardent AI skeptics are looking for a pause, not necessarily a rollback. That's not the same as nuclear weapons, in which many people seek to disarm. In fact, you had the treaty outlawing them in the international system. Many people out there say we'd be better off in a world without nuclear weapons. But that is not necessarily the case so much with AI, just that AI could get out of control in the future. Related to this is that very few people have ever seen a nuclear weapon. Indeed, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty means that for most people, they've never even seen a nuclear explosion. They might see some grainy footage on the internet or YouTube or some artificial kind of creation that's fictitious, but with their own eyes, few people understand what a nuclear explosion really is and what it can do. With AI, every person around will have interactions with the AI on an increasing frequency and depth going forward. That by the time that AI becomes a threat, every person will know what an AI system is and have an idea of it, perhaps even a relationship with them of their own. Another huge difference is that the use of nuclear weapons anywhere on the planet will be instantly detectable and usually attributable. Whereas with the use of AI systems, even for destructive purposes, we'll have the same problem that current cyber weapons do, that attribution can be a real challenge, particularly since the actors using them take steps to conceal their involvement. So overall, in terms of collectively managing this through command and control systems and doctrine, the actual proliferation and use of artificial intelligence used in a harmful way will be extremely difficult to control relative to our experience with nuclear weapons. Does this mean that the situation is totally hopeless, that unless we pause all AI development, the result is inevitable, that civilization will be totally destroyed? I know many smart people think so. I do not agree with that inevitability. I don't think that it's constructive even to assume that that's the case. But all of that will be explained in another video. The purposes of this video is to talk about the similarities and differences relating specifically to nuclear weapons. Are there any lessons that we can draw from the nuclear experience? Well, there are some. One is already naturally occurring. The best people are working in AI at the moment. There aren't any smarter people on the planet than the people who are working on these systems. Likewise, the potential downside risk and dangers posed by AI, while not entirely understood and not discussed evenly, is nevertheless on the public agenda. People are considering these issues. There are dynamics in terms of arms race that's quite similar. Because the United States had the bomb, the Soviet Union felt it had to have one too. This is definitely at play in the AI arms race between nation states, and check out my video on the US-China AI arms race if for more information on that. And this impacts the potential way forward. One of my recommendations is that the first AI superintelligence that governments develop that are used for the enhancement of nation state power, well, the role of that AI should be to hunt down and destroy other AIs. That should be its objective function. Now, the challenge there is to control it, make sure that it doesn't have externality problems, it doesn't just destroy all computers on the planet in order to achieve that outcome. But it would nevertheless provide a tool of protection while many other AIs proliferate. It would help control the spread of AI. And if we had a technology, a tool in the early days of nuclear weapons proliferation that could be used primarily to disarm other countries, then we would want to have that. In fact, many military actions that are taken around the Middle East, around other parts of the world, is precisely related to that purpose, to slow down and stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons to other states that may not handle them responsibly. Now, how we create a complete taxonomy of AI risks at the existential level is the subject of another video, but hopefully this one gives a kind of similarities and differences split between AI superintelligence and nuclear weapons. If you found value in this discussion, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. What do you think? Are there other differences and similarities between the two that I've missed? Is even drawing that analogy somewhat hysterical? Perhaps AI will never have the ability to threaten humanity on that scale? Or have I not gone far enough that there are many threats in AI that are far beyond what we have experienced with nuclear weapons? Whatever your thoughts, be respectful about it, but leave them down below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.